You know, I was just thinking, in the movies, why does everybody do the old prospector thing? Like, they put the lantern in front of their eye and they literally look directly into the light, blinding themselves to see in the dark. It makes no sense. I don't get it. Hey guys, welcome to Gear Tasting. Today I wanted to continue a little bit from a couple of episodes ago where we talked about the difference between overlanding versus camping. And we got a few questions that came in to ask if we would go through the glamping box, because everybody's like, what's glamping? So glamping to me means that you are camping glamorously. So therefore you've got things that you wouldn't normally take camping, especially backpacking. Obviously there's a big disconnect between backpacking, which is everything is on your back when you're out in the wilderness, versus camping, which could be car camping or something like that. Which car camping I consider kind of glamping, because you can put everything plus the kitchen sink in your car and go to a destination and literally be within, you know, a couple of feet of your car the whole time you're camping. So I would kind of term that as glamping. And this is just an example of one thing that I bring with me when I'm in that kind of situation. So this is a Sterilite bin I have, and it literally says glamping on the outside of it, because these are the kind of things that I've got with me when I'm camping in that kind of situation. Because I do like different ways of camping. I don't just go glamping, I don't just go overlanding, I don't just go backpacking. I like to do kind of everything. I like to get outdoors as many ways that I can. So if I've got a group of friends that I'm going with and we want to do a backpacking trip, that's what I'm going to go do, and I've got the gear to support that. And if I'm just heading out for the weekend and I just want to get away into nature for the weekend with Kelly or something, I'll grab the glamping stuff, because she doesn't really like to do the whole backpacking thing. So that's kind of a little bit of the explanation of the why and what this is. So first, before I open up the bin, I want to start with lanterns, because I've already got this stuff out here and I kind of want to talk through that. Because there's a big difference in what I've found, and my lessons learned from lanterns is that I would rather go with a mantle type lantern than a battery powered lantern. So I've used both over the years, and I keep coming back to a propane fueled mantle type lantern. So these propane fuel containers usually come in a 2-pack. They're typically made by Coleman. Walmart has their own off-brand too, but they're very cheap. So if consuming a container of fuel and, you know, having a metal bottle left over that you're worried about recycling or getting rid of is a problem for you, then you might want to look at other alternatives to propane. There are containers that you can fill with things like white gas and things like that are refillable, rather than consuming a propane container and then dealing with, you know, the trash from it. So that's something to look into if you're concerned about that aspect of it. But I've always just found that these are a very cheap method for powering stuff. So not only do I use propane tanks to power a lantern, but I also use them in the stove that I have. So this is typically, and I talked about this just a little bit on the last episode, but I opened it up so you can kind of see what kind of stove this is. This is just a typical Coleman 2-burner stove. They're very inexpensive. They're like 30 to 40 bucks. You can throw one of these on top of a table, and it's got this stem that you plug in, and the stem kind of has a place to screw in the propane tank to it to ignite the 2 burners. So these, I believe, I can't remember, I don't think these have an igniter on them on this model, but you know, you just use either a stem lighter like you do when you're lighting, you know, like a, what do you call that, like a long stemmed lighter, I don't know what you call that, a fireplace lighter, I'm not sure. A barbecue lighter or something like that. You can light one of those without having to put a lighter right next to the propane if you're worried about that when you turn on the burner. But I like this 2-burner stove because I can be making coffee in a percolator at the same time that I'm cooking breakfast or something like that. So I like having 2 different burners, and the propane really lasts a long time. It doesn't go away really quickly, so I can usually get by on most multi-day trips with like just 2 cans of propane. That's 1 to run the lantern typically, and 1 to run the stove. So I might take a third just for backup or something like that. But you know, this is the battery-powered lantern. It's LED, which I like, but it takes an enormous amount of batteries. There's like, I can't remember, it's like 8 Ds, something like that. Yeah, 8 D batteries, and that's a lot. That's a lot of D batteries, and I don't know. I think it's an absurd amount of batteries to have to worry about, especially when you're camping and things like that. So I I've never really been a fan of that. I don't feel like it produces enough light, you know, compared to a mantle type lantern. But if you're going to bring it inside of a tent, that is a concern for a lot of people. So if you do have it in a tent and you want that kind of light inside a tent, you know, this may be the best alternative for you for that. So this is what a propane style mantle type lantern looks like. So it's got a little case on it that I like. If I can get it open here. I think it, wow, it might have sealed itself shut in the heat. There it goes. That was weird. I think it melted together. Anyway, so maybe that's something to keep in mind. I always keep spare mantles in the lantern. I haven't probably used this in a couple of years now. So the mantles are what you see right here. Those are those little bags basically on each of the gas ports. So you have to put new mantles in pretty much every time you use the lantern after a couple of days. So sometimes in the same trip you'll have to replace the mantles, but it's pretty easy. Basically this is what the lantern looks like. So you've got the body and you've got the housing and then you've got your fuel. So you basically just turn in your fuel like this in the propane, if you don't drop it. And then you set it down into this right here. So you can have it either sitting on a table with this little base that makes a handy carrying case, or you can put this back on like so and then hang it from something too, and you don't have to have the base when you do that. But it's got an igniter on it, which I like, and then you turn it on to ignite the fuel, and then you're basically just burning propane to power the lantern. And it gets pretty hot, but it also is very bright, which I like. I like the light that comes off of it, and I prefer that over the LED style, which I was mentioning earlier. So this is a glass cylinder, and I can't remember, there's an actual term for that, globe maybe, I think. But these are usually on by, or put on by wire. So it's like a little twist method, and you can see that these old mantles just completely deteriorate. You know, it's just, they're gone. It's just like dust. So you take basically your new mantles and you put them on. This is kind of what they look like new, and they've got this little metal apparatus here. And you just put it on to each side like so, and then kind of wrap it around so it locks on there. And that's what it looks like before you basically spark it up. You have to have mantles to get this going because the gas kind of pools inside the mantle and sparks in that device. So that's kind of what that looks like. I won't spend too much more time on that, but that's kind of the deal with a lantern like that. And again, it really just kind of matters what you're doing with the lantern. Like I said, if it's going to be indoors or inside a tent, you definitely want to do something with the LED option. So inside my glamping box, I've got kind of a varying amount of things in here. So one, are some plates. Plates are something you don't really think about, but they're great to have. I've used an old CD case in a pinch when I didn't have a plate when I was camping. So CD started standing for compact dish instead of compact disc. So I like to have a plate with me when I'm doing stuff like that. This is Kelly's plate, this is my plate. There's obviously a large difference between the two. Anyway, so, and then cutting boards are kind of something you don't really think about, and I like to have these little kind of cheap thin plastic cutting boards when I'm cutting stuff up, because that's something you wind up doing when you're cooking, when you're camping. You know, speaking of cooking, I've got different kind of tools here, kind of a cheap barbecue set that I keep in with my stuff. And then, you know, if we want to make s'mores, these are s'more sticks. You put some marshmallows on the end of them. They're perfect. I usually grab these when we're making s'mores around the fire at home too. So these are great for that. A canteen cup I don't really use. This is just kind of in here. This is more, I guess, something I just kept in here for some reason. Then utensils usually come into play. I typically either have, like, these are great to take. These are like little plastic sporks that are easy to wash. That's the thing about glamping. You're also doing dishes typically in that kind of environment, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I like, you know, things that aren't necessarily disposable silverware. I don't take, you know, the cheap disposable plastic silverware. I like having stuff that I can wash and keep with me. So this is just kind of a varying assortment of that. A little broom whisk kind of thing is a great thing to take if you've got a smaller tent. But if you've got a larger tent that you've got, you might want to take kind of a full-size broom to kind of sweep out your tent too. That's something a lot of people don't think about. And also a doormat. I don't have that in this box, but I take that a lot when I'm camping too, because when you're coming in and out of a tent, having a little doormat outside seems like an unnecessary thing, but it actually pays off in the end. So more stuff, a few stakes, just in case I'm staking a tarp or something like that. That's typically what the stakes that are in this box are used for. And this is my percolator. If you've ever used a coffee percolator when you're camping, it's pretty lightweight. It's all aluminum. And this is the way that I make coffee when I'm camping. And it's actually pretty good. I kind of look forward to percolator coffee when I'm out glamping. So you fill up water to the fill line inside of here. You basically put your grounds into this little basket, and then you put this on. And what happens is, as the water boils, so you put this apparatus all together and stick it on the burner that I talked about. So as the water heats up, it pushes through this and basically drops on top of your grounds, and then the coffee comes back through. You got to be careful not to overboil it, or you're going to be tasting grounds and drinking cowboy coffee. So I actually like the way that tastes. You just have to make sure your grounds are kind of coarse. And then these are just various pans. Here's another plate with a kind of a collapsible brim on it that I've used before. These are just some of the pots and pans that I have for cooking. So this is an MSR set that I've had for a long time that's been really good and I've really liked. And then inside here is kind of some of the small things that you don't really think about. I keep these little sponges, which are great for doing dishes and cleaning stuff, which I'll talk about again in a minute with this 3-pot system that I have. Dish soap is in here as well. I've also got some olive oil for making things like, I know I use that when I do stuff like cobbler in a Dutch oven and stuff like that. So these are little pot handles, so you can use this for a frying pan. This is the same deal, just a lighter weight option for picking up hot pans. Measuring cup usually comes in handy, so does a little towel for drying. I always keep a P38 can opener in here just as an extra, just in case, because they're lightweight and you never know when you're going to come across a can that you need to open. And a little Bic lighter for lighting the burner. And then, I won't get too involved in the pots and pans because I'm already going a little overboard here. These are little holders for plates. Sometimes take paper plates and you can use these little holders if you want to do it that way. More stakes. So this is the last thing that's really kind of in here. Camp suds is what I like to take for doing dishes and cleaning stuff. And then I have kind of this 3-pot system or 3-bucket system. You never know when you need to shred cheese. That's pretty much it in here. But I have these two are kind of just extra buckets. But these are what I use as the 3 basically bin pot bucket system for doing dishes. So the first would have hot soapy water in it. The second would have just clean rinse water in it, and then the third would have a cap full of bleach, and this is like kind of your sanitation. So that's your 3-system deal. So you would wash in hot soapy water here, transfer your dish to clean rinse water, and then, or cold rinse water, and then into kind of another cold water bucket with a cap full of bleach and to kind of sanitize your dishes. And that's an easy way that I learned from scouts to do dishes when you're out in the field. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the stuff that I take when I'm glamping. Don't forget your salt and pepper, and thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Gear Tasting, and remember, as always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments on the YouTube video, ask on social media, use the pound tag Gear Tasting on any of those, and we will find your question and address them here on Gear Tasting, just like this episode on glamping. So if you like what we're doing here on Gear Tasting, please consider joining our Patreon channel. It's patreon.com/ITSTactical. We've got some bonuses to give away to you for your support as well, and thanks for watching.